This modern life we live is robbing us blind, and it's not just your money, it's your time as well. You see, this age we live in, it's promised us so much convenience, and it's given us that convenience, but it's also turned into the biggest time thief in history. You see, when you tell yourself, I'll work a few hours on my new business, or I'll sit down and put 30 minutes aside to memorize my Quran, revise my Quran, a lot of the time you sit up after that time's over and you realize you've accomplished nothing. And in the exact same way, when you're scrolling TikTok or Instagram, you'll be there for 30 minutes scrolling through I don't know how many reels. And when you finish, you'll feel like it was only 5 minutes. And what's even worse is you won't even remember one of those reels that you watched. You're left with this deep sense of regret that you just invested time in something, your precious time, but you got zero out of it. But somehow we keep repeating this, even though we hate it time and time again. And this just seems to be the time that we're living in. And we've got to admit, it's only the wise really that survive and actually make good use of their time. They're quite productive. And they're actually using their time to get ahead in their ibadah, their life goals, their wealth goals. And here's the secret. There is a massive difference between efficiency and effectiveness. Efficiency is purely doing something, anything, with the least amount of input to get an output. For example, McDonald's has mastered the process of making that burger as efficiently as possible. It's got each of the staff members specialized in a certain area. It's got everything labeled very clearly. It's got a checklist and a 5-step process for how to make the burger. It's got the burgers already warm and the burgers perfectly at a certain eye level, and it's got the bun over here and it's got the mayonnaise over here, and they made it perfectly efficient to make that burger. That is efficiency. A very small amount of time and energy and effort is needed to make a burger, to get the job done. Effectiveness, however, is getting the right thing done. The thing that takes you the furthest towards your end goal, even if it takes a bit more resources, not as efficient, but it's the right thing to do. It's the thing that has the highest leverage. Efficiency is making a McDonald's burger in 3 minutes and 24 seconds exactly and having it ready for the customer. But effectiveness is asking yourself whether you even want that burger in the first place. Will it even get you closer to your big goals in life? That's effectiveness. So yes, the modern lifestyle makes you obsessed with efficiency and not effectiveness, and therefore it robs your time. Like the famous scholar Hassan al-Basri, he said, "O son of Adam, you are nothing but a few days. So when your days have passed, a part of you has passed." And Allah will ask us on Yawm al-Qiyamah about our time and how we spent it. That portion of us that passed away every day and the luxury we had to choose what to do with that time. We'll be asked about that because it is a luxury, because it's a blessing. You know, some people, and maybe you feel like this some days, you will wake up in the morning and you will have no control over your time really until late at night. Because you'll be commuting, you'll be going to work, you'll be doing this, you'll be doing that. You don't actually have much choice over what you do. But those minutes and those hours, and maybe on the weekend or something, where you do have freedom to do what you like, that is where we will be the most accountable for what we do. So because time is so precious, we're going to fight back against that in this video. I'm going to show you exactly how to reclaim your time, reclaim your life, and live a life of purpose, fulfillment, and achievement. Let's get into it. Okay, firstly, once you understand this, every decision you make will be crystal clear. It turns confusion into clarity and chaos into calm just by sorting this one thing out. You see, Nuh alayhi salam, the great prophet, who is known for what? Giving da'wah for 950 years. He wasn't chasing the number, he was fulfilling his purpose, his mission. And therefore, he was willing to go at it for 950 years. For as long as Allah decreed and wanted for him to fulfill that purpose and that mission. He wasn't competing in a clout contest. He wasn't waking up every day to look at his followers increase. And it definitely wasn't a popularity competition at all. He knew his mission and he fulfilled it for 950 years, and he succeeded. Because he fulfilled his mission, his purpose, which was what? Which was to obey Allah, which was to give da'wah. And he did that for that whole period, and he was patient upon it for that long. So of course he succeeded, even if his followers seemed small. His followers were so few that they fit on that boat. You see, basing your life on what is trending, what's cool at the time, what others will praise you for, what women find attractive, that's honestly for weak men with no character and no vision for themselves. Of course, Allah says, if you follow most people, they'll lead you astray. And those people that you're seeking to please and to get praise from and to get validation from, they will die one day. And you will die. And on Yawm al-Qiyamah, it won't matter the clout you got, the following you got, the praise you got in this life. What matters is what Allah thinks of you in the end. It's like climbing a mountain. You've got all the preparation done. You're at base camp. You've bought all the equipment. You've done the training. You've done the cardio. And now you're climbing up the mountain. It's really tough. The conditions are difficult. The weather is terrible. But you keep going. You keep pushing and pushing. And step by step, you make it to the top of that really tall mountain, the peak of the mountain. You make it there, only to look across and realize that you've climbed up the entirely wrong mountain in the first place. That's what chasing other people's praise and chasing trends looks like. So what's this got to do with time and making use of your time and being effective instead of efficient? Well, the point here is you need to step back and decide not what other people tell you that you should do, not what seems cool to do, not what is trending, not what will get you a lot of attention and praise, but you need to step back and decide, what do I want to do with my life? What do I want to accomplish? What do I want to take with me to my grave that will be worth it? This choice of what you're actually going to invest your time in is effectiveness. It's deciding that I don't want the McDonald's burger. I want the ribeye steak, Wagyu, A5. Okay? I want that. That's what I've chosen. I've stepped back. And although McDonald's is on every corner, and although it takes 3 minutes and 24 seconds to get that Big Mac, I'm actually going to walk 20 minutes down the street to get the ribeye because I've actively thought about it and decided, yeah, that's what's good for me. That's what I want. That's what I want to take with me to the grave, if you like. And when you make this decision of at least what general direction you want to go towards in life, you'll find so much more clarity. You'll find decision making easier, and you'll be able to persist in different things because you know it's worth it, because there's a bigger goal in mind. For example, let's say you take your precious weekends, or you go and buy and sell things on the weekend to get a bit of extra money. Now, if that extra money was just going to maybe a little holiday or something, that might not be motivating enough for you to do it. But what if I told you that doing that every weekend for a year or two would actually allow you to buy a house or something really big and something that you really want to do? Then you'd be more likely to put in that extra work every weekend, even though it's tough, right? And therefore you'll be making much better use of your time. It won't be slipping away. It won't be robbed from you. All the people that we remember as being great people, the people that we look up to, the people we want to teach our kids to look up to, they were not known for just being famous or just having loads of money. People like Muhammad Ali, who was very good at boxing. He was one of the best at boxing, but he's almost equally known for his stance against the Vietnam War, for standing up for his principles. That's what we remember people for. We don't remember people for being rich for the sake of it and doing nothing much with that money. We don't remember people for being just famous, just for the sake of being famous, maybe even being a good entertainer. We remember people for the principles that they had, the stances they took, and the contributions and changes they made in the world. But even more powerful than that is that you might not make a difference in the world that is big enough that other people will know about it around the world. But Allah will know it, and that's where all the difference comes in. So now really think about it. What do you want to focus on? What do you want to choose to use your precious time on? What personally makes you motivated on an emotional level, on a deeper level? What drives you? What do you want to make a change in the world in? What would you be willing to do on the side of your job? You have your job, you have your chores and your duties in life, but you're willing to spend an extra hour or two every day contributing to something for free. What would that thing be? Or what if you woke up tomorrow and you had $50 million in your bank account? What would you spend your time doing? What contribution would you make? These are really good questions to answer to find out what direction you deeply want to go in life. And if you don't know, I always say, climb a lot of hills. Climb a hill, then another hill for just a short time, a month, 2 months, 3 months. Climb these hills until you find, yeah, that hill, it really drove me. I really was good at that thing. I could really make a contribution in that thing. Then climb the mountain version of that hill. So this could be done in the form of volunteering in different places, internships in different places, working on weekends, shadowing people who are doing a certain thing until you find that thing that really drives you. I'll give you my personal example is coaching and mentoring Muslim men. I really deeply believe that if the average Muslim man was a high performer, he did what he said he would do, then the world would change immediately. I think there are so many Muslim men with good intentions. They want to do something good in the world, but they just don't do it. They don't take action because they're not a high performer. They don't do what they say they will do. So that's the first stage and something that I'm really passionate about. And the stage after becoming a high performer is becoming a leader. And so my passion is for coaching and mentoring those brothers to become high performers and then eventually to become leaders and to work on myself, of course, as a leader. That's what I'm passionate about. That's why I've spent my precious time, like we're saying, doing coaching, reading books about coaching, reading books about behavior change, and taking courses on how to coach. So bro, step back. Don't look at McDonald's, even though it's right in front of you. Turn a little bit to the side and just think, what am I passionate about? Answer those questions I asked you earlier and really think about what general direction. It doesn't have to be a perfect mission, a 10-year vision, and then a 20-year thing, but at least a direction. And then you can start taking steps towards that. Now, the next big thing to make the biggest impact with the small amount of time that you have and to stop the modern world from robbing you is to take your duties in life, take your job, take the sleep that you have to sleep, take the help you have to give your parents, take the mission that we just talked about and the purpose that you've chosen for yourself. And then everything else, which is extra to that, you need to remove it. You need to delete it. The whole point of the word priority is that it's singular, that you have one priority. Now, sometimes you'll have a job and you just have to do that job to make a living, etc. But I'm talking about whenever you have any spare time at all, what is your focus? What's on your mind? It has to be a small amount of things that you're focusing on. If you've got your bow and arrow and you're trying to aim at multiple targets, well, you can only really hit one. So what you want to do is actually pick that target very well, decide that the other 5 targets, I'm not going to hit those targets, and that's fine. And then aim very well and hit right in the bullseye of that target that you've chosen. If we go back to Nuh alayhi salam, his whole mission was doing da'wah to his people. His mission was not to develop them economically, which is very beneficial, right? It wasn't to fight enemies and push off invaders. No, his focus was da'wah to his people. It wasn't even da'wah to the whole world. It was da'wah to his people that he was sent to. And he said no to everything else to fulfill his mission. So if you're going to fulfill your mission, you need to learn to say no to distractions. Now, there is an exception to this, which is when you're climbing those little hills here and there. Of course, you're going to go from one hill to another, working out what's good for you. But once you find that mountain summit that you want to reach, you have to stop climbing other hills and just go right up that mountain. Now, some people ask me, does this mean I can't work on my Quran on the side? I can't go to the gym on the side? You can, but what you have to realize that starting a new thing, so let's say you haven't gone to the gym for a couple of years, you want to get back into it. That is a new thing. That is climbing a hill, if you like. You're going to have to focus on that for a few months before it becomes a normal automated part of your life, before you can then move on to another new thing that you need to focus on. So whenever you're starting something new, getting into the mode of it, you're not in maintenance mode, you're in takeoff mode, if you like. You're not on autopilot cruising altitude, you're in takeoff mode where you're using a lot of fuel. You have to know where you are with each thing. So if I've not been to the gym for a while and now I'm restarting, that is a new focus for me. If I'm learning Arabic, I'm learning Turkish because I live here in Turkey. That is a new thing for me, something that I'm probably going to have to give a lot of focus to actually make progress in. And then once I've been doing that for a month, 2 months, and I'm used to it, 3 months is the ideal period that I like to go for, then I can leave that on autopilot and go to the next beginning project, if you like, the next takeoff phase of a project. But ideally, yes, we do want to live a balanced life, but we have to realize that if we're going to accomplish huge things in life, then we're going to have as minimal things that we focus on as possible. So get that through your head, get that clear. That is a key pillar of saving our precious time and using it effectively. Now, there is another very Islamic concept that helps us to win back our time and stop it from being stolen from us in this modern age. After all, the Prophet ﷺ, he said, the hour will not be established, Yawm al-Qiyamah, it will not come until time passes very quickly. So much that a year is like a month is like a week is like a day is like an hour, and an hour is like just a flickering flame. Crazy. He also said, take advantage of 5 things before 5 things happen to them. And he mentioned your youth before your old age and your health before you become ill. But the one that I want to focus on is your free time before you become busy. He specifically told us, take advantage of that free time before you become busy. Sometimes in life, your parents get ill, family member gets ill, you need to do this, you need to work overtime. And before you know it, you've got no free time. But when you do have free time, that's the thing Allah will ask you about the most. And that's the thing the Prophet ﷺ is saying, take advantage of that free time before you get busy with other things. You see, there is a phenomenon that many cultures have observed and Islam has it in its roots. For example, in 1896, Vilfredo Pareto, Italian of course, he was busy harvesting peas in a garden. And as he's doing this, he's realizing that some of the pea pods have a lot more peas than the others. There seems to be some distribution of some doing really well and some plants not growing much at all. And when he starts to actually count the individual peas in each pod, and then each pod versus the plant, he noticed that 20% of the plants and of the pea pods were producing 80% of the actual peas. And then even if we take it to Salah ad-Din, when he was taking Jerusalem, he did the highest leverage thing. He did the 80-20 distribution thing, if you like, which was not to go straight after the Crusaders and straight to try and take Jerusalem back. First, he went for the highest leverage thing, which was to unite the Muslims together so they would be a stronger force. Because he knew if he did this first, it would make the rest of his mission much, much easier. The second thing he did, which was the highest leverage thing, is he didn't attack from Syria, where he was originally. He actually went and took Egypt. There was an opportunity to take Egypt, to help the Fatimids out, and then take over from them. And Egypt became another player in this army that could attack the Crusaders and take back Jerusalem. And so controlling Egypt and Syria made it much easier to take Jerusalem, which is what he did. This is called leverage, doing something small that gets you a massive result. And what we call this in Islam is barakah. Literally, the definition of barakah is to get more out of something than you would normally expect. Putting into dollars, hours, whatever it is, and getting out 5 instead of what you thought you would get out 2. And getting more out of something than what normally or materially makes sense. There's an amazing book that Muhammad Faris wrote about barakah, the barakah effect. But here are some tips on how to increase the barakah in your life so that this precious time that is being robbed from you, that you're trying to make the best use of, then you get the most out of it by having barakah in it. So number 1, you want to start everything with Bismillah. When you start stuff with Bismillah, barakah gets put into that action, into that project. Number 2, and this is really important, is have a good intention. When you have sincere intentions, now that thing that you're doing becomes an elite thing. It becomes a next level thing because you're doing this for the sake of Allah. You're doing this to please Allah. And that's when Allah will help you. Allah will put barakah in it. Allah will make it multiply. Allah will send people to help you. He'll send resources. He'll make the time that you're working on it feel limitless and feel really long because of your sincerity. Sincerity is a huge multiplier of effort. Number 3 is ask Allah for help. This is crazy, right? Like, of course, we're going to ask Allah for help. We need Allah's help, etc. But how many times do we actually just sit and be like, that's my project. That's my thing I'm working on. I need Allah's help for this. I cannot do it without Allah's help. Sometimes what we do is only when it gets hard, we ask for Allah's help. But we have to realize that we can't even tie our shoelace without Allah's help. So what about your big projects, your important projects, the things that you have good intentions in? Make dua for those to succeed. For number 4, there are certain natural patterns in the world, like gravity, that Allah allows to happen. We call them rules of physics or whatever. But there's also rules that we can't see or measure. These are like the sunan of Allah, the sunan of how He lets the world exist. These are the sunan of Allah, the patterns that Allah puts into the world. And one of the patterns that Allah tells us about is that if you're grateful to Him, then He will give you more. He will increase what He's already given you. He's given you one thing. You were grateful for that thing. Now He's turned that thing into 3 things because you were grateful. Not because of extra effort you put in, but because you were grateful. And that's why we have to understand that this world is not just material. We can actually make more progress in whatever we want to achieve in our life because of things like just being grateful deep in our heart. Not something you can see. Not even necessarily saying it or praising Allah because of how He's helped you, but just in your heart being grateful to Allah. Now, of course, gratitude comes with certain things like if you're grateful, of course, you want to worship Allah more, you want to thank Him, you want to praise Him, yes. But gratitude alone can turn 1 into 5. Next, of course, is the Prophet ﷺ. He mentioned that there's barakah in the early hours. So, whatever you're working on, the most important thing, effectiveness, remember, going to get that ribeye steak instead of the McDonald's. When you want to do that, do it in the early hours as much as you can. A great time, if you've got a 9 to 5 job, is to wake up a bit earlier and spend some time on your project before you go to work. Because sometimes after work, you're tired, or people ask you to do favors for them, or people are around you, right? They're asking you, or you're just mixing with people, spending time with family. But in the early hours before work, that's a time when either people are asleep or everyone's going to work. So if you could grab half an hour or more at that time, there's a lot of barakah in it. You can get a lot done. The other thing which we talked about initially is to have a mission and make that mission about serving people one way or another. When you serve people, Allah will put barakah in your work, in what you're doing. So that kind of goes along with having a good intention. Part of your intention should be that you want to serve people and help people. But sometimes even if you help people outside of your project, that will cause Allah to put barakah in what you do. Because you help people, you're a helpful person. The other thing, of course, is the Quran. The Quran is a source of barakah. So the more you engage with it, the more you're going to have barakah. So you have to have, I always recommend a habit of reading a certain amount of Quran every single day. People call it a wird. To start with even a few lines, even one line, right? I'll have a whole video about habits, inshallah, one day. But you want to start with something small and just read Quran every day. Have it in your life. And finally, the thing Muhammad Faris talks about in his book about barakah is to have a gardener's mindset instead of a carpenter's mindset. What's the difference? Well, a carpenter is obsessed with being in control of everything and having very specific plans, goals, ideas, numbers that he just has to achieve, right? It's about having rigid goals and then trying to force the results towards those goals. Whereas a gardener focuses much more on, if I generally did these actions, I had this attitude, this mindset, I would generally succeed. So let me do that. So instead of focusing on forcing growth, we want to focus on nurturing and growth and just doing the right actions and leaving the results to Allah. And just like a gardener will tend to the plants, will prune them here, will water them here, will put some fertilizer here, we need to tend to our heart, to our sincerity, to our mindset, and make sure that our sincerity is in the right place. And that will put barakah in what we do, and it will make us grateful because we're not so obsessed with particular metrics and numbers that we have to force ourselves to achieve. We're doing the hard work, and then we're having a good intention. We're expecting the best from Allah, and whatever happens, we're happy with it. We become a bit more focused on the process and the actions that we should be doing rather than the results. That's what we want to do as a gardener. And this usually leads to long-term success and some sort of project or something that will even last beyond our life, rather than a short-term forced growth that then will just die shortly after that. And because we're grateful and because we're just looking for the results from Allah, but we are putting in that hard work, we're more able to be grateful with the results, get less frustrated, and just be happy and more content. Okay, so that's cultivating barakah into your project, into your life. But what if the ultimate real success didn't come quickly, didn't come from speed, it came from something much harder to master? You see, when you're on your personal chosen life path, you've removed distractions, you're focused on a few things, and you're doing the right things to attract barakah into what you are spending your time on. There is another ingredient that if you downplay, you'll just go astray completely and give up pretty much. The best example I can think of this is the Prophet ﷺ. When he was giving dawah for 13 years in Mecca, there were a lot of trials. His whole life was trials, but there were a lot of trials, especially in that period. He faced resistance. He didn't have a huge amount of followers, but he kept going with the night prayer, with Dar al-Alqam, where people were secretly studying and learning Islam, where he was cultivating relationships with different people. All of this hard work, which was 13 years of doing it, led to the migration, the hijrah to Medina, when things got a lot more opened up, even though the battles came and they tried to attack. But it was a period of more openness and less narrowness. And you see that patience that he showed, it led to that victory of the hijrah. And then after the hijrah, when they took Mecca, and then after Mecca, even after the Prophet ﷺ's life, you know how quickly Islam spread to all corners of the globe. And of course, we know this from the Quran itself, when Allah says, Inna Allah ma'as sabirin, Allah is with those who are patient. What is patience? It's sticking with doing the right thing, and it's sticking with avoiding the bad thing, and it's just keeping going with those good things, not stopping, not giving up. Likewise, the French colonized Algeria for how long? Many countries were colonized for a few decades. Algeria was colonized for 132 years. Can you imagine 132 years? That's multiple generations. Which means those that eventually fought the French and kicked them out, they were not even born at all when they were first colonized. That means the struggle, the patience kept up with the struggle. The patience stayed there for that whole period of time. There were ups and downs, but it stayed there. So that the people who were not even born when they were first invaded and colonized, they had that spirit and that patience to fight off the invaders. And they did that successfully after 132 years. Likewise, Jerusalem, it was conquered by the Crusaders for 88 years. What did the Muslims do? They didn't give up on it. We had Salah ad-Din who had that vision. From a young age, he had that vision that we need to take that thing back. We need to take Jerusalem back. We need to take Masjid al-Aqsa back. And he did that. It didn't matter that in 88 years, the Muslims hadn't taken it back. There was the patience there. And the patience, like we said, to first take Egypt and then go after Jerusalem, that made it work. And to give you an example next to that, Israel has only existed for less than those 88 years, for 76 years. So inshallah, we won't have to wait 88 years. That's all I'm saying. And to give a modern example, one that you might know is IERA, the Dawah organization that was founded by Abdurrahim Green 15 years ago. They've already had an amazing impact. So many people converting to Islam, learning about Islam, having at least better attitude about Islam. But it didn't start off easily. They didn't have unlimited funding. It wasn't an easy journey. And it's only been 15 years. And why do I say it's only been 15 years? It's because their vision is to spread Islam into every home. For Islam to reach every home, that's a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ about a time near the end of times that Islam will enter every home. They want to be part of that hadith, of that prophecy happening. That's a huge vision. It's something they're very far from reaching right now. But they have patience. They're only 15 years in. So for us to have a big impact in life and for us to feel purpose and we're doing some sort of contribution, we have to think in those time periods and not in a few months or a few years. So the point here is that success comes from patience, from long-term thinking, and from trusting in Allah to put barakah in what you're doing and to push it forward. Think about the compounding effect of being patient with something. The longer that you're doing the same thing and you're working in the same field, the more you build up that experience, right? So the thing that you do in year 1 and then doing that same thing in year 10, you're probably going to do it much quicker, much easier because you're just more experienced in it. The same goes for anything that you're trying to achieve in your life, whether it's memorizing the Quran. Memorizing is going to be easier in year 3 than it was in month 3. That business that you start now, you're going to be much worse at those business-related skills now than you will be in 2 years, 3 years, and 10 years. So without patience, you'll never build up that experience to get to the point where you find these things easier and quicker to do. So pace yourself, bro. Work on things in a way that's sustainable. Be grateful for whatever you achieve right now. And just know that big things always take time. And that's great. We should embrace that. And know that every step along the way, inshallah, with a good intention, like we talked about with barakah, with a good intention, every step is rewarded. And we never know whether the final goal of what we're trying to work on will be accomplished in our lifetime, or maybe we are just paving the road for someone else to take up that baton and move forward with it. So your time's being robbed with you, but with these pillars that I've shown you, you can actually claim it back and make much better use of your time. And the highest leverage thing that you can do is to just decide on what you're actually going to spend your time on instead of being on autopilot. That is the biggest first thing that you can do. But what if you don't know what to do, what kind of project to do with your life? I've given you some tips here, but there is another video on how you can raise your ambition and how you can have big goals in your life. So that's what you got to do now. Go and watch that video. It's on screen right now and enjoy. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.